So good evening. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let us continue from the previous class. Okay. So we are discussing about condensers. We had a brief discussion about condensers, and we had seen that there are two types of condensers. One was the direct contact condenser, and another is shell and tube type. Okay. So now the cooling water is supplied to the condenser. Again, it can come in two forms. Either it can come from a direct source like a natural body like lake or river, and is being continuously supplied, or we can have a cooling tower which can supply the cold water, and the same water is circulated again and again. So the cold water goes to the condenser, comes back as hot water, again is cooled in the cooling tower, again is sent back to the condenser. The change of temperature is around 8 to 10 degrees centigrade. Okay. So again within cooling towers we have studied about dry cooling towers. Okay, where there is no evaporation of the cooling water, so the water gets circulated through tubes, and the tubes are finned and air is passed over the tubes by forced convection, and as a result the water gets cooled. Okay. So the main drawback of these dry cooling towers we had discussed was that they can only go up to the temperature of the, means theoretically the minimum temperature that can be obtained is the temperature of the ambient air. In real life we cannot obtain even that, but theoretically that is the limit. Okay, that is the lower limit. So but on the other hand, if we use the evaporation process as we had discussed in the previous class, we can go to a lower temperature as compared to the ambient temperature, because the evaporation takes up latent heat from the cooling water itself, so the water comes down to a lower temperature, and theoretically the minimum temperature that can be obtained is equal to the wet bulb temperature. Okay, wet bulb temperature you guys already know, and I have also discussed in the previous class. So what is wet bulb temperature? So that is the minimum temperature that is possible, and that is much less than the dry bulb temperature if the humidity is less. Okay, if the humidity is 100%, what will be the wet bulb temperature as compared to the dry bulb temperature?
So same.
It will be same. So there cannot be any evaporation, and the cooling tower is not going to work. Okay. So we need, so for a very humid place, this type of cooling towers are not very effective. It is effective for drier regions. So to summarize what we had discussed in the previous class about wet cooling tower, cooling occurs because of evaporation of part of the circulating water. Because part of the circulating water gets evaporated, we need additional makeup water. The quantity of additional makeup water is equal to the rate at which the evaporation is occurring. Okay, this is needed to compensate for evaporation, and the theoretical minimum temperature that can be achieved is equal to the wet bulb temperature. In real life obviously we cannot achieve that, it will be a few degrees above wet bulb temperature in real life, and because we can go to a lower temperature as compared to dry cooling tower, sorry, so we can have more turbine work output. Okay. So now we will go into some technical details of the wet cooling tower. Wet cooling tower, why we are studying in more details? Because this is the most prevalent type of cooling tower. This is the most widely used type of cooling tower, as and you have seen also pictures in the previous class I have shown, like very large, these are very large devices, and very large buildings, like 30-40 stories high, 300-400 feet high, and can be seen from far away. So if you see a power plant from many kilometers away, you will see the cooling towers, and you will see that there is a cloud-like formation at the top, which is the condensation of water. So the water vapor which comes out gets condensed when it comes into contact with the cold atmosphere, and it creates a cloud-like structure above the cooling tower. Okay. So wet cooling towers are very widely used because of its advantages, all the advantages. Okay. And in nuclear power plants also you will see wet cooling towers. So many nuclear power plants also from far away, if you see, you will see wet cooling towers, large cooling towers. Okay. So anyway, there are three parameters which are used to quantify the effectiveness or efficiency of a cooling tower, okay, wet cooling tower. What are these parameters? So if we consider a few temperatures, the water entry temperature to the cooling tower, okay. So we are, let me open the other file here, okay, although it looks very small. So if the water inlet, hot water inlet occurs at TC1 temperature, okay, and the water after cooling, the water goes out at TC2 temperature. So we can specify a range of the cooling tower. Range means how much cooling is occurring in the cooling tower, which is equal to TC1 minus TC2. This is of the order of 6 to 10 degrees centigrade. Okay. So range means the decrease in temperature of the water which is occurring in the cooling tower. So higher range will be better. Okay, it means that more cooling can be done. Now there is another parameter which is known as approach. Okay, so if TWB is the wet bulb temperature of air, theoretical minimum temperature that can be achieved by the cooling tower, and we are achieving a temperature TC2. Okay, so actual temperature that we are achieving is TC2, but theoretically we could have achieved TWB. So then this difference between the actual temperature and theoretical minimum is known as approach of the cooling tower A. Okay, this is also of the order of 6 to 8 degrees centigrade. So for example, if the wet bulb temperature is, so let us put some numbers. Okay, say the water enters the cooling tower at 30 degrees centigrade and is cooled down to 20 degrees centigrade, and the wet bulb temperature is 14 degrees centigrade. Okay, water enters the cooling tower from the condenser at 30 degrees centigrade, is cooled down to 20 degrees centigrade and is sent back to the condenser at 20 degrees centigrade. And the wet bulb temperature for the atmospheric conditions there is 14 degrees centigrade. In that case, the approach will be 20 minus 14, so 6 degrees centigrade, and the range will be 30 minus 20, it will be 10 degrees centigrade. Okay. So we can define an efficiency of the cooling tower in terms of how much cooling is actually achieved divided by how much cooling was theoretically possible. Okay. So actual cooling achieved is TC1 minus TC2, which is equal to the range of the cooling tower. This is the cooling that we are actually obtaining. So in our example, this is 30 minus 20, so 10. Okay. Excuse me. Just a second. Okay, let us continue. The theoretical cooling that can be obtained is the entry temperature of the hot water minus the minimum limit, which is the wet bulb temperature. So in our example, this is equal to 30 minus 14, so 16 degree. So our efficiency for our problem is 10 by 16. Okay. So this TC1 minus WB can also be written as TC1 minus TC2 plus TC2 minus WB, so which is equal to range plus approach. So efficiency is equal to range divided by range plus approach. Okay. So in our case, this is 10 by 10 plus 6, so 10 by 16. So this is the efficiency of a cooling tower. So we want the efficiency to be as large as possible, but ultimately you cannot, like, there is a limit because otherwise you will need very large evaporation time to achieve or to go near the wet bulb temperature, which is not possible. So there is a limited time for evaporation because the water is falling down. It takes a certain amount of time, so you cannot have unlimited time. So full evaporation cannot occur, so you cannot reach wet bulb temperature. Okay. So any questions? So these are three important parameters. If somebody asks what are the important parameters to characterize a cooling tower, wet cooling tower, so you have to say approach, range, and cooling efficiency. Okay. So then if we want to find out what is the pressure difference which is causing the natural convection in the cooling tower. So this is similar to the stack or chimney that we have studied previously before mid-sem. Okay. So the pressure difference that is present, that is causing the air to move up within the cooling tower, can be written as the weight of the outside air column, which is rho 0 GH, okay, where rho 0 is the density of the outside air, minus the weight of the inside air column, okay, which is equal to rho I GH, where rho I is the density of the inside air. Density of the inside air is less. Why is it less? Because it contains more water vapor, and water vapor has lower density. Water vapor has lower molecular weight, 18 as compared to 29 for air. So water vapor is lighter than air. So it moves up. Okay. So and h is the height of the cooling tower. So if the cooling tower is very tall, that's why the cooling towers are made very tall, so that there is sufficient natural convection, so that you don't need any large fans or forced draft fans for the circulation to occur. Because of the very large size of the flow, if you need fans, the fans will need large amount of power. Okay. So remember that the cooling water which is being circulated, we will see in a problem today, is many times larger than the steam that is circulated in the power plant or the steam generator and turbine. Okay, so we will see in a problem today that if we have 100 kg of steam with realistic values, if we are circulating 100 kg per second of steam, the cooling water required is around 6000 7000 kg. So 60-70 times mass flow rate of cooling water is required. So that cooling water goes to the condenser from the cooling tower. So cooling tower needs to cool this 60-70 times of mass flow rate of water. So that's why the cooling towers are very large in size. So as a result, it is much more beneficial to have natural convection, so that you can save power by removing the fans or large, or otherwise you will need very large blowers. Okay, structure will be very different. So typically H is very large and the wall has hyperbolic profile, as we have discussed. These are hyperbolic because of superior strength, because this type of structure profile has superior strength. We can withstand the wind also better. Okay, the resistance it creates to the wind, it can withstand the forces of the wind better, because this is a very large cross sectional area. There is a lot of resistance due to wind. Okay. So now we will go into a few preliminary calculation of cooling tower. Okay, so in this course we just have very preliminary calculations of cooling tower. We will just see some, like, how to relate the mass flow rate of water with that of air, and small things like how to find the approach and range, basically based on other given parameters. Okay, so for this, if we, I will keep the diagram. There is a diagram here somewhere, but I don't have any diagram. I don't have a separate diagram. Okay, we have to just go with this. No, I have later on. Okay, but first let us go through some basics. So if the atmospheric pressure is P, okay, so atmospheric pressure we can write in terms of the partial pressure of dry air. So some of these things you have already studied in much more details in your air conditioning, refrigeration and air conditioning course. Is that course finished? Refrigeration and air conditioning?
Almost, sir. Yes.
It's finished, right? So you must have studied about psychrometric charts in some detail, because for air conditioning you need psychrometric charts, like what is wet bulb temperature, what is dry bulb temperature, then how to relate it to relative humidity and humidity ratio, specific humidity. These things you have studied, psychrometric chart. Maybe different chart, but the pattern is similar. Have you studied psychrometric charts?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So then I will just relate a few things. Okay, very simple things. Already you know these things. So partial pressure of air is PA, partial pressure of water vapor is PW. So total pressure is P. Okay. Now the symbols may be different from what you studied in air conditioning, but the concept is same. So relative humidity we will denote by phi. Okay, which is equal to the partial pressure of water vapor by the saturation pressure of water vapor at the same temperature. So for example, if we are at 30 degrees centigrade and at that temperature we have a certain partial pressure of water vapor, say 2 kilopascal, and the saturation pressure is 5 kilopascal, then the relative humidity is 40%. It gives us a measure of how much water is present in the atmosphere, okay, or in the room or in any space. So if the relative humidity is 100%, it means that the actual pressure of partial pressure of water is equal to the saturation pressure of water. Means it is the pressure. What is saturation pressure of water? If we go to steam tables and look at the steam tables, for example, so we have some time today. We are almost finished. Like we are at the end of our class. So let me show you a few values. So for example, 30 degrees centigrade, this is 30 degrees centigrade, okay. So partial pressure of water vapor should be, means saturation pressure is 4.24 kilopascal. So if the partial pressure is 2 kilopascal, we know that relative humidity is 2 by 4.24, 2 by 4.24, no units are there, okay. If you multiply by 100, you get percentage. So maximum water that can be held in air at 30 degrees centigrade occurs when we have a partial pressure of water which is equal to the saturation pressure, which is 4.24. Now if you go to a higher temperature, 40 degrees centigrade, the maximum amount of water which can be held in the atmosphere will increase, because we are at a higher temperature. The saturation pressure now is 7.37. As a result, we can hold much more water in the atmosphere. Okay, at lower temperature, at 20 degrees centigrade, we can hold much less amount of water vapor in air. So accordingly, if the water vapor remains same, say water vapor has a partial pressure of 2 kilopascal, but the temperature changes. At lower temperature, we will have higher relative humidity, because we are dividing by low value. At 40 degrees centigrade, you will have a low relative humidity. Okay, although the water vapor is same, water content is same, the ratio of partial pressure of water to the saturation pressure will change. Okay, so this is what is relative humidity. You already know. I have just revised that for you. Now there is another term which is specific humidity or absolute humidity or humidity ratio. What is this? This gives us the absolute value of water, mass of water vapor per unit mass of dry air. Okay, so if I have 1 kg of dry air, how much is the water vapor content in that? Okay, so relative humidity gives us the relative ratio based on the saturation condition. Specific humidity gives us the actual mass of water vapor per unit mass of dry air. So it can be written as W or omega. Okay, so different books have different symbols. Supposed to be omega, but some books are using W. Okay, so omega is equal to m by g, where m is the mass of water vapor and g is the mass of dry air. Okay, so maximum amount of specific humidity or humidity ratio will occur when we are at saturation condition, when the relative humidity is 100%. So at that condition, if the mass of water vapor is ms, okay, so then omega max or omega s can be written as ms by g. Okay, so g remains constant, mass of dry air. So the mass of water vapor has increased. So this is the maximum amount of specific humidity that is possible, and obviously this will change with temperature. At higher temperature, we can have higher humidity ratio or specific humidity. So now based on ideal gas behavior, again this equation you must have studied, but let us revise. We can write for water vapor, we can write Pw, partial pressure of water vapor, into volume V. Volume is the same volume, is equal to mass of water vapor m. We are using m for mass of water vapor instead of mw. Okay. So m into Rw, where Rw is the specific gas constant for water vapor, into T, where T is the temperature. Okay. Similarly for air, Pa into V. Pa is the partial pressure of air, V is the volume, is equal to G, where G is the mass of dry air, Ra is the gas constant of dry air, and T is the temperature. Okay. So based on this, we can define omega as m by g. So if you take ratio of m by g, you will get, so Vv gets cancelled, Tt gets cancelled, so we are left with Pw by Pa. Okay, partial pressure of water by partial pressure of air, into RA by RW. Now RA by RW can be easily calculated and is equal to 0.622. Okay. So RA is 287 joule per kg Kelvin, RW is 462 or something like that. So it is equal to, so basically it's the ratio of molecular weight, 18 by 29, inverse to the ratio of molecular weight. So we can write PA as P minus PW, okay, because P is equal to PA plus PW. So ultimately we can write the absolute humidity ratio as omega is equal to PW by P minus PW into 0.622. Okay, where 0.622 comes because of RA by RW. So omega is equal to 0.62 PW by P minus PW. So if PW is the partial pressure of water vapor, if it is known, okay, based on the relative humidity, it can be known. So if somebody says that the temperature is 30 degrees centigrade and the relative humidity is 40%, how will we know what is PW? Without going to the psychrometric chart, just based on table also we can find. So again I will say, relative humidity is 40% and temperature is 30 degrees centigrade. What will be the value of W? How will we find? Answers. Think about it. Very easy question. Okay. Dhruval, you are there. What will be the answer for this? Relative humidity is 40% and temperature is 30 degrees centigrade. So what will be the partial pressure of water vapor? How will we find this?
So from 30 degree we'll find P saturated.
Yes, from 30 degree we will find P saturated. So at 30 degree P
And
saturated is 4.24. Then that into relative humidity, 4.24 into 0.4, right? Because we can use this expression. So 5 into P saturated is equal to PW. So 4.24 into 0.4, whatever is the value, it will be 1.6 or 1.7, something like that.
1.67. Yes.
Yes. So that will be PW. Okay, and P will be the atmospheric pressure. So it will be known. So we can find out what is the humidity ratio. So what is the mass of water vapor per unit mass of air? So if I have 100 kg per second of air flowing, what will be the mass flow rate of water vapor? That we can find, okay, based on this calculation. So which is actually important for us to know. So then some other definitions you already know. Dew point temperature, TDP, we will write as TDP, which is the saturation temperature at the partial pressure of water vapor. Okay, what does it mean? So for example, in our case, our partial pressure of water vapor was, we had just calculated 1.67 kPa. Okay, so what is the saturation temperature corresponding to 1.67 kPa? It will be something between 14 and 16. Okay, we can interpolate. It will be something between 14 and 16, because at 14 it is 1.59 and at 16 it is 1.81. So maybe around 14.8 or 15 degrees centigrade, 14.8 degrees centigrade. So this is the dew point. Okay, so at this, if you bring the if you bring the water vapor, that is present, water vapor plus air mixture, which was present at 30 degree and 40% relative humidity, if you keep everything same and just cool it, the water will condense out when you reach the dew point. So if you keep on decreasing the temperature, the relative humidity will keep on increasing and it will reach 100% at 14.8 degrees centigrade. After that, if you keep on cooling, the atmosphere cannot hold any more water, because at 14 degrees centigrade it can only hold water up to saturation pressure of 1.59. So extra water which was present will just condense out as droplets, and that is what we see in the morning, right? In the morning temperature is less, so some of the water which is present in the atmosphere condenses out on the particularly temperature of the surfaces like leaves of the trees, then car window, all these things, metallic bodies, the temperature is very less. So during night the temperature goes down, so water droplets condenses out on those surfaces. So, and also small atmospheric particles which are floating in the atmosphere, microscopic particles, water droplets also condense there, which forms the dew that we can see in the morning, okay, or dew or fog. So that's why it is called as dew point temperature. Now we have also discussed about wet bulb temperature. So let us formally define it once again. It is the temperature recorded by a thermometer when the bulb is enveloped by a cotton wick saturated with water. Okay. So we have discussed about this. So it gives us a measure of how much is the relative humidity in the atmosphere. As you have correctly, as someone has correctly pointed out, if the relative humidity is 100%, the wet bulb temperature will be equal to the dry bulb temperature. Okay, so for phi equal to 1, dry bulb temperature is equal to wet bulb temperature. Dry bulb temperature is the normal temperature that we measure using a normal thermometer. So in cooling tower, we cannot achieve wet bulb temperature as extremely large area will be required. Okay, you will need extremely large time also for the evaporation to occur theoretically. So we reach a temperature which is a few degrees centigrade higher than the wet bulb temperature. How much higher? 6 to 8 degrees centigrade, as we have studied here, which is known as approach. Okay, so we reach a temperature which is 6 to 8 degrees centigrade higher than the wet bulb temperature. So with this background, let us do a quick analysis, half-page analysis of cooling tower. What is the mass balance and energy balance? Okay, any questions? Anything you are not clear about regarding relative humidity and stuff, similar stuff? Okay, we will continue. I don't remember too much in this area, means although I know what is there related to power plant, but previously I have taught thermodynamics long back, 3-4 years back. So at that time I had much more in-depth knowledge of all this air conditioning and refrigeration when I was teaching thermodynamics. Anyway, so let us continue. So let us assume that cooling tower like this schematic diagram. Okay, we will ignore the hyperbola shape and we will just consider the evaporation that is occurring. Okay. So a mass flow rate of water equal to m dot W3 comes in. Okay, mass flow rate of water at, of m dot W3 at condition 3 comes in. This comes in from the condenser. So this is at a higher temperature. I will also put some numerical values so that you get a feel about the values. Okay. So let this come in at 30 degrees centigrade. Okay. Mass flow rate of say 5000 kg per second comes at 30 degrees centigrade. And this falls down and some part of it gets evaporated and rest of it goes out. Okay. Rest of it goes out at a lower temperature, say 20 degrees centigrade or 22 degrees centigrade, something like that. Okay, let us call 20 degrees centigrade. So this is at lower temperature, it is going out. Okay, and because of evaporation, because we are losing certain amount of water, we are providing makeup water which is equal to m dot x. Okay, so to continue this circulation continuously for indefinite time, this mass flow rate which is coming from the condenser should be equal to the mass flow rate which is supplied to the condenser. So m dot W3 should be equal to m dot W4. It means that whatever water is lost due to evaporation is provided by the makeup water m dot x. Okay. So that m dot W3 remains equal to m dot W4. So that the same water can be circulated again and again. So now we can write this makeup water and let me also explain. The air comes in at condition 1. Okay. Air comes in at condition 1 and goes out at condition 2. So it means that relative humidity here is phi 1 and relative humidity at the when the air goes out is phi 2. Absolute humidity or specific humidity is omega 1 and when it goes out it is omega 2. Temperature is T1 and when it goes out it is T2. Okay. So all the conditions are 1 at the inlet and conditions are 2 at the outlet of the air. Okay. So at the inlet of the air, the water vapor content in the air is equal to G into omega 1. Okay. By definition, we have seen that water vapor we can write as omega is equal to m by g, or A is equal to omega into g. Okay. So at state 1, omega 1 into g, g is the mass flow rate of dry air, which we will assume remains constant. Okay. So g into omega 1 is the mass flow rate of water vapor at the inlet. Okay. After evaporation, the relative humidity has and its specific humidity both has increased. Okay. So humidity has increased after evaporation. Now the specific humidity is omega 2. Okay. So the mass of water vapor at the exit is G into omega 2. Okay. So the total mass that has changed due to evaporation, the mass of water which has evaporated, if we call this as m dot x, this is equal to G into omega 2 minus omega 1. Okay. This is same as the mass flow rate of makeup water. Okay. So m dot x is equal to G into omega 2 minus omega 1. Okay. So if we know the state 1 and 2, we can find out omega 2 and omega 1. So how will we know state 1 and 2? If we know the temperature and relative humidity, we know the state 1 and 2. Okay. So based on this, we can calculate the relative humidity and temperature, measure it based on wet bulb temperature and normal dry bulb temperature. We can measure the relative humidity and temperature, and based on that we can calculate the specific humidity and find out the mass flow rate of water. Okay. So we'll keep this diagram open here. So if we now do an energy balance, okay, the energy which comes in can be written like this. So the total energy which comes in is equal to the energy which comes in with the wet air. Okay. So mass flow rate of air is G1. Later we will take G1 equal to G2, means we will keep constant mass flow rate of air. Okay. But here for generalization I have written that mass flow rate of inlet air is G1. So G1 air has, so if 1 kg of dry air has H1 enthalpy, including the enthalpy of the water vapor. Okay. So H1 is the enthalpy of wet air per kg of dry air. Okay. So like this we defined. If you remember in your air conditioning, the enthalpy of wet air is defined in terms of per kg of dry air. So per kg of dry air, H1 is the enthalpy of wet air, which is equal to HA1, which is the enthalpy of dry air, plus omega 1. Omega 1 is the mass flow rate of water per kg of dry air, water vapor per kg of dry air, into H omega 1, which is the enthalpy of water vapor. Okay. So let me explain again. So H1 is the enthalpy for 1 kg of wet air. Okay. 1 kg, not 1 kg of wet air. For 1 kg of dry air, what is the enthalpy of the wet air? Okay. If you have 1 kg of dry air, what is the enthalpy of wet air? So it is written as kilojoule per kg of dry air. Okay. So if I have 1 kg of dry air, what is the enthalpy of wet air? So if I have 1 kg of dry air, the enthalpy of the dry air itself is HA1. Okay. So for 1 kg, the enthalpy of the air is HA1. And for 1 kg of dry air, the amount of water is omega 1. Okay. By definition, for 1 kg of dry air, the amount of water is omega 1. And per kg of water, the enthalpy is HW1. So for omega 1 water, we have enthalpy omega 1 into HW1. So the total amount of enthalpy for 1 kg of dry air plus the amount of water vapor that is present is HA1 plus omega 1 HW1. Okay, so this is H1. So this is written in terms of kilojoule per kg of dry air. Okay, you will see in the psychrometric chart also. Kilojoules per kilogram of dry air. Okay, this is how enthalpy is defined for wet air. So this multiplied by the mass flow rate of dry air gives us the total energy which comes in with the air. Okay, including the water vapor. Now plus some energy comes in with the liquid water. So what is the energy which comes in with the liquid water? M dot W3, which is the mass flow rate of liquid water, into HW3. HW3 is the enthalpy per kg of liquid water. Okay, so M dot W3 into HW3. Plus some energy comes in with the makeup water. So what is the energy of the makeup water? M dot X is the mass flow rate of the makeup water multiplied by, if HW is the energy per kg of makeup water, depends on the temperature of the makeup water. So at what temperature it is supplied. So if you assume that we know the temperature, we know what is the enthalpy of the makeup water. So M dot X into HW is the enthalpy of the makeup water. Okay. So this energy is the total energy which comes inside the cooling tower. This is equal to the energy which goes out of the cooling tower. Okay. So the energy which goes out with the wet air is G2, where G2 is the mass flow rate of dry air, into H2, where H2 is the enthalpy of wet air per kg of dry air, which is HA2 plus omega 2 HW2, plus the energy which goes out with the water. Okay. So which is equal to m dot W4 HW4. Okay. So this is the energy balance, and we can assume that m dot W3 is equal to m dot W4. Mass flow rate of water remains constant. Whatever comes from the condenser is sent to the condenser. Okay. So let us call this as m dot W, and also the mass flow rate of a dry air remains constant. So G2 equal to G1 equal to G. So let us call this as G. Okay. So by putting these values, we can find, so we can write this as G into H1 plus m dot W into HW3 plus m dot X we can write as G into omega 2 minus omega 1 equal to G2, sorry, instead of G2 we will write G into H2 plus m dot W into HW4. Okay. So if you rearrange the terms, we can write, we can take the water terms in one side. So m dot W3 HW3 minus m dot W4 HW4. So m dot W3 is equal to m dot W4. So we can write this as m dot W into HW3 minus HW4 is equal to G into H2 minus H1 minus, from this m dot X we can write G into omega 2 minus omega 1 HW. Okay. So G into H2 minus H1 minus m dot X, which is G omega 2 minus omega 1 into HW. So this is equal to m dot W HW3 minus HW4. Now HW3 minus HW4 I can write as Cp of water into TW3 minus TW4, where TW3 and TW4 are the inlet and outlet temperature of water. Okay. So if I write like this, we can take CPW and m dot W to the other side, and we can write TW3 minus TW4 as G H2 minus H1 minus G omega 2 minus omega 1 HW divided by CPW m dot W. Okay. So this is TW3 minus TW4, which we are calling as range. Okay. So we had already defined that as range. So range can be obtained if we know the inlet and outlet conditions. Okay. Mass flow rate of water can be calculated based on the condenser calculation, and from state 1 and 2, H2 and H1 and omega 2 and omega 1 can be calculated. Okay. And we can solve this per unit mass of air if needed. And once you can calculate TW3, so TW3 anyway will be known. So because that is the inlet temperature which comes in from the condenser. Okay. So approach can be calculated as TW3 minus wet bulb temperature state 1. How will we know the wet bulb temperature state 1? Based on the state 1 conditions. If we know the relative humidity and the dry bulb temperature at state 1, we can find the wet bulb temperature at state 1 using the psychrometric chart. So this finishes our course. I will go through a couple of problems. Okay. So any questions on this analysis of the cooling tower? Anything which is not clear to you? We will go through a couple of problems for half an hour, and then we will finish the class. I will take a break in between. Okay, so I am tired. I spent the entire day in hospital today. So just before the class I came back. So anyway, any questions?
Sir,
No, sir.
Okay, so let us take a break of 5 minutes, and then I will go through a couple of problems on the condenser and cooling tower. And remember that I have also uploaded a few problems in the problem sets. Okay, so you have to go to the assignments, and you will see problem set 3, which is for the fuels and combustion. Problem set 4 is for nozzles. Problem set 5 is for turbines, and problem set 6 is for condenser and cooling tower. Okay, so few problems are there. You should try to practice them on your own, and then only check the solutions. And you can practice more problems from the books also. I will let you know after the class. And the syllabus starts from fuels and combustion. Okay, so the syllabus starts from page 60, fuels and combustion, for the final exam. You can expect a few short question and a few problems also, particularly from turbines and these fuels and combustions. We've studied a lot of problems, similar type of problems, like the assignment problems you can expect, and a few short questions. Okay. So nothing will come from before the mid-sem exam. So our syllabus will start from after the mid-sem exam, because it's only a 60 marks paper. Okay. So let us take a break, and after this I will just show you the psychrometric chart once again for your revision, and we will go through the problems. Okay. Meanwhile, if you have any other questions related to the exam or anything else, you can think about it and you can ask me after 5 minutes. Okay, so we will continue. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? No questions? Okay. So anyway, let's continue and see a couple of problems. So first is the standard problem on a for a surface condenser. Okay. So we have the following data. Mass flow rate of steam is 100 kg per second. You can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mass flow rate of steam is 100 kg per second. So some realistic values are given here. Okay. So that you get a feel of how in real life what type of values are involved. So the steam inlet temperature is 40 degrees centigrade and the inlet quality is 90%, 0.9. Okay. So this is the quality of the steam which is coming from the turbine exhaust. Now the cooling water enters the condenser at 30 degrees centigrade, means the cold water itself is 30 degrees centigrade from the cooling tower, and the outlet temperature of the cooling water after condensing the steam is 38 degrees centigrade. So only 2 degree difference is there, terminal temperature difference, okay, TTD. Also the condenser pressure is 8 kilopascal. So pressure of the pressure within the condenser is 8 kilopascal in the shell side. Velocity of the cooling water is 2 meter per second, and the condenser parameters are given. Tube outer diameter is 30 mm, tube thickness is 2 mm, which means that inner diameter is 26 mm. Okay, so 30 minus 2 into 2. Overall heat transfer coefficient is 4000 watt per meter square Kelvin, U0. So just a standard problem similar to our economizer problem. So we have to find the mass flow rate of cooling water, then rate of leakage of air, and the number of tubes in the condenser and the length of each tube. Okay, I will keep the problem open here so that we can refer to this data while solving the problem. So mass flow rate of cooling water, then rate of leakage of air, and number of tubes and length of each tube. Okay. So it is given that the saturation temperature, steam inlet temperature is 40 degrees centigrade at 90% quality. Okay. So because it's a condensation process, it occurs at a constant temperature. So steam will go out at 40 degrees centigrade. And what will be the quality at the exit of the exit? Yes.
0.
0 means it will be saturated liquid. So quality is 0. So both the conditions are fixed. So we know the state 1 of steam, it is 40 degrees centigrade, 0.9 0.9 is the quality, and state 2 is 40 degrees centigrade, 0 quality means saturated liquid. So we can obtain the enthalpy at both the states if needed, or any other values. Okay. Now for the water enters at 30 degrees centigrade as shown here, like a counter flow heat exchanger, and it goes out at 38 degrees centigrade. Okay. And so the condenser, for the saturation pressure corresponding to this temperature, we will see is less than 8 kPa. Okay, it is said that condenser pressure is 8 kPa, but the saturation pressure will be less than 8 kPa corresponding to this temperature. So this the condenser pressure is higher because some amount of air is also present in the condenser. Okay, so if the saturation pressure is 7 point something, so some small amount of partial pressure of air is also present because of presence of air. Okay. So for the given conditions, we will keep this open here. Okay. TS1 equal to TS2 equal to 40 degrees centigrade, which is also equal to T saturation. TW1 is 30 degree, TW2 is equal to 38 degree. Mass flow rate of steam is given as 100 kg per second, and quality at inlet is 0.9. Okay. So by energy balance between the steam and the water, so energy transfer between the steam and the water. So energy transferred from the steam is equal to m dot s H1 minus H2. So from the energy, the state of the steam changes from H1 S1 to 2. So for mass flow rate of steam m dot s, we have m dot s into H1 minus H2 is equal to the change of energy of the steam. This is equal to the change of energy in the water, which is equal to the mass flow rate of water m dot w into Cp of water into Tw2 minus Tw1. Instead of this, we can also use directly Hw2 minus Hw1 and use saturated, as an approximation, use the saturated enthalpy, or we can take Cpw as some value, means 4.18 or 4.2, and based on that and Tw2 minus Tw1 we can calculate this. So anyway, so H1 from the steam tables, if you go to the steam tables, H1 is HF at 40 degree plus X1 into HFG at 40 degree centigrade. Okay. So because I have time, I will go to the steam tables at 40 degree centigrade. HF is 167.452 and HFG is 2407. Okay. 167. So I have taken from another book, so the values are slightly different, but nearby only. 167.53 plus 0.9 into 2406 kilojoule per kg. I have taken from the values from book of Chengal books, so the values are slightly different. So this is equal to 2332.93 kilojoule per kg. H2 is the enthalpy, saturated enthalpy of saturated liquid at 40 degrees centigrade, which is 167.53 kilojoule per kg. So the energy lost by this steam is 100 into 2332.93 minus 167.53. This is equal to mass flow rate of water into 4.2, which is the Cp of water in kilojoule per kg, into 8, which is the change in temperature, Tw2 minus Tw1. Okay, 38 minus 30. So from this we obtain a mass flow rate of water which is 6,444.6 kg per second. You can see this is a very large quantity. With realistic values we have calculated, and this is much larger as compared to the mass flow rate of steam, which was 100 kg per second. So this is 65 times larger. Okay, so it means that the amount of cooling water that is required is much larger. Why? Because in the steam the energy change occurs in terms of latent heat, which is huge. In the cooling water the energy change occurs in terms of sensible heat, which is very small. Okay. As a result, we need very large mass flow rate of water. So that's why the cooling tower needs to be so large, because it caters to such a large kind of mass flow rate of water. So around 6.5 tons of water are passing every second. You can imagine that is quite large. Okay, so this is the first part, mass flow rate of cooling water. So now we have to find the rate of leakage of air. So the shell pressure, the condenser pressure is given as 8 kPa is equal to partial pressure of air plus partial pressure of steam. Partial pressure of steam is the saturation pressure at 40 degrees centigrade. Saturation pressure at 40 degrees centigrade is 7.3. Okay. So 7.3851. I have taken from another table. Here it is given as 7.3743. So from the table from which I have taken, it is 7.3851. So 8 is equal to P partial pressure of air plus the saturation pressure of steam, which is 7.3851. So partial pressure of air is 0.6149 kilopascal. Okay. So now we have seen previously, we can, even if without seeing also, we can just write partial pressure of air into volume, okay, is equal to mass flow rate of air, mass flow rate of leakage of air into Ra, gas constant of air, into temperature, which is 40 degrees centigrade. So this volume can be written as volume flow rate of steam, okay, corresponding to the mass flow rate of air. So which is equal to m dot s into specific volume of steam at state 1. So at state 1, specific volume of steam is Vf at 40 degree plus 0.9 into Vfg at 40 degree. Again from the steam tables we can obtain, and this will be equal to 17.565. So at 40 degree Vf plus 0.9 into VFG. Okay, 0.9 into 19.54. So this is equal to 17.565 meter cube per kg. So using this, we have, so instead of kilopascal, if I write in Pascal, so 614.9 Pascal into 100 is the mass flow rate of steam into 17.565 specific volume of steam is equal to mass flow rate of air into 287, because I have written in Pascal, this is also I am writing in joule per kg Kelvin. The 287 into 313, which is the temperature. If I had written this in kilopascal, then I have to write this as 0.287 in kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Okay. So mass flow rate of leakage of air is 12.02 kg per second. We can see it's not a very negligible amount, because the mass flow rate of steam is quite high. Mass flow rate of air is also considerable. Okay, 12.02 kg per second. So final part is that number of tubes and length of each tube. This part we have already discussed yesterday also, and previously we have studied for economizer. So the mass flow rate of water is equal to number of tubes n into the mass flow rate through a single tube. Mass flow rate through a single tube is pi by 4 di square, which is the area, cross sectional area, into density of water into speed of water. Okay. So mass flow rate of water we have already calculated as 6444.6 kg per second is equal to n is the unknown number of tubes into pi by 4 into internal diameter is 0.026, okay, 26 mm, 30 minus twice the thickness, so 2 into 2, so 26 mm, so 0.026 square into 1000. We are just taking approximation that water density is 1000. Okay, you could have taken more accurately from the specific volume, but this is sufficient. Into velocity is given as 2 meter per second. If it is not given, we can assume 2 meter per second, as I have discussed in the previous class. So with this value, we can find the number of tubes. It is equal to 6069.17. We have to round up to the larger value always. So n is equal to 6070. So the number of tubes you can see is very large. So condensers are very large devices. Okay, so you can imagine that so many tubes are there, 6000 tubes are there for condensing that this amount of water, 644, not for for using this amount of cooling water for condensing 100 kg of steam. For condensing 100 kg of steam, we are needing this number of tubes with realistic values. Okay. So it's a very huge device, or multiple condensers needs to be used. Okay. So now to find the length of each tube, we can do another energy balance. So first we will find the log mean temperature difference, LMTD, which is equal to inlet temperature difference minus outlet temperature difference by log of inlet temperature difference by outlet temperature difference. So at the inlet temperature difference is 40 minus 30, we have seen, which is 10. At the outlet temperature difference is 40 minus 30, which is 2. So 10 minus 2 by log of 10 minus 2, sorry, 10 by 2, which is 4.97 degrees centigrade or Kelvin. Okay. So this is the value of log mean temperature difference. Now if we do an energy balance, so mass flow rate of steam into enthalpy change of steam, H1 minus H2, this is equal to the energy transfer through the area of the pipe, area of the tube, which is equal to U0, so which is the overall heat transfer coefficient, into A0, which is the overall area, into log mean temperature difference, which we have calculated as 4.97. Okay, so all the values are known except A0. If you put the values, you will get the surface area for heat transfer as 10,892.35 meters square. Again, you can see that surface area is very large. Okay, 10,000 meters square, very large surface area. So because we have already calculated the number of tubes, we can find the length of each tube. So total surface area for one tube is pi into d0, outer diameter, into L. Okay, so for n tubes, the total surface area is n into pi d0 L, or L can be written as A0 by n pi d0, so which is equal to 19.04 meter. Okay, so this is the length of each tube. So this is how you can calculate or solve a problem. You can find out the mass flow rate of cooling water and the design of the condenser and the rate of leakage of air also for the condenser. Okay, we can see that we are dealing with very large numbers here. Length itself is quite large, and the number of tubes is extremely large. Okay, surface area also is extremely large. Any questions? Otherwise, this problem is very standard. So I have just written this, given this problem so that you get a feel of the actual values which are involved. Because sometimes when we just go through the theory, we are unable to appreciate or comprehend the scale of the systems which are involved. Like how large are the systems? Okay. So these values actually gives you some feel of the actual scale of the device which is involved. Otherwise, we don't appreciate how large are the systems which are designed. Okay, how large is a power plant? These are huge devices. Each of these devices, steam generator, turbine, each of them are very large devices. There is a lot of effort to design and build. Any questions? Otherwise, we will move on to the final problem. Okay, final problem is on a wet cooling tower. You guys are still there, right? You can still hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So for the wet cooling tower, okay, let us consider a wet cooling tower with the following data. Okay. It need not be mentioned wet cooling tower. Whenever we are saying this relative humidity and other things, it means that it's a wet cooling tower. Because for dry cooling tower, relative humidity will not come into picture. So for a cooling tower, we have the following data. Okay. The air enters at 20 degrees centigrade with a relative humidity of 60%. So the atmospheric condition means outside the cooling tower is 20 degrees centigrade and the humidity is 60%. Okay, relative humidity is 60%. Now after the air passes through the cooling tower, because of evaporation, the humidity increases. So the air goes out at 90% relative humidity and at a higher temperature, 28 degrees centigrade. Okay. Why the temperature increases? Because it is exchanging heat with the hot water also. Because water inlet temperature is 30 degrees centigrade, that increases the temperature of the air also. And then the relative humidity increases because of evaporation. So both the temperature and relative humidity has increased. Now the water condition is given as inlet water is at 30 degrees centigrade, okay, from the condenser, and the makeup water comes from some natural body at 20 degrees centigrade. Okay, so condenser, the hot water from the condenser comes at 30 degrees centigrade, makeup water comes at 20 degrees centigrade, and the mass flow rate of water is 1.15 kg per kg of dry air. Okay, 1.15 kg per kg of air. Okay, I think it's per kg of dry air. It's not written here, but it should be per kg of dry air. So we have to find out the amount of makeup water which is required, the temperature of water leaving the cooling tower. Okay, so we have to find the temperature. So it is entering at 30 degree. At what temperature it is leaving the cooling tower? Once we find that, we can find the range of the cooling tower. Then we have to find the approach of the cooling tower. So we have to find the wet bulb temperature also at the inlet condition. And once we find the approach and range, we can find the efficiency of the cooling tower. Okay. So these are the things that we have to find. Amount of makeup water required, temperature of water leaving the cooling tower, approach and range, and efficiency of the cooling tower. So all the things that we have studied basically. So this is the schematic diagram. Water comes at temperature TW3. So I will keep this open here. Okay. Water comes at temperature TW3 with mass flow rate MW3, goes out at temperature TW4 with mass flow rate M.W4. M.W4 should be equal to M.W3. And air comes in. So we will consider 1 kg air. Okay. So 1 kg per second of air. We will do the calculation per kg of dry air. So, and it comes at temperature T1 with relative humidity 60% and goes out at temperature T2 with relative humidity 90%, 5.2. Okay. So these values are here. So let us try to solve this problem. And we will be using a psychrometric chart for solving this problem. So I will show you how to find the values in psychrometric chart. You guys should already know this, but for the sake of completeness, I will also show you how to deal with a psychrometric chart. So first we want to find out the amount of makeup water required. So amount of makeup water required is the change in the volume of the water vapor that is contained in the air. Okay. So at the inlet the water vapor was G into omega 1, now it is G into omega 2. Okay, and G we are taking as 1 kg because we will do the calculation per kg of dry air. So we have to find, so for 1 kg of dry air, the makeup water required is omega 2 minus omega 1. Okay. So now what is omega 2 and omega 1 we have to find out. So at 1 we have this state defined because we know two conditions, 20 degree centigrade and 60% relative humidity. So let us find out all the values at state 1. Okay. So this is a psychrometric chart. I hope you already know this. You might have seen a larger version of the psychrometric chart, but it gives us all the information regarding wet air. Okay. So at the bottom axis we have the dry bulb temperature going from 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4 at intervals of 1, and the large divisions are 10, 20, 30 and 40, 50 up to 50. Then on the y axis on the right hand side we have the humidity ratio or the specific humidity, okay, omega, that we are trying to find. So per kg of, so moisture in grams per kg of dry air. So for example at this point we have 10 kg of 10 grams of water vapor per kg of dry air. Okay, so this is the vertical axis. Then these green lines are what? These green lines are relative humidity. Okay, the first green line is 10% relative humidity, second one is 20%, 30%, 40% like this up to 100%. The final green line, curved green line, is 100% relative humidity, full saturation condition. Okay. Then we have specific volumes. Okay, specific volumes are these other green lines. Okay, I can draw here, right? So these lines, are the specific volumes. So here you can see that this is 0.94 cubic meter per kilogram of dry air. This line is 0.92 cubic meter per kilogram of dry air. Okay, so these lines are the specific volume, and these lines we have defined as relative humidity, right? These curved lines, the entire curved line. I am not drawing here because it's very difficult for me to draw. Then we have wet bulb temperatures. These small dotted lines you can see are wet bulb temperature. For example, this dotted line here. Okay, this is the 25 degree wet bulb temperature line. This is the 25 degrees centigrade wet bulb temperature. So next one will be 26 degree, 27 degree like this. Okay, and these are the saturation temperature. So for example, at 100% relative humidity, for 20%, 25% wet bulb temperature, the saturation temperature will also be 25 degree. Okay, if we have less relative humidity, then we will have less saturation temperature. Saturation temperature is also the dew point temperature for that temperature. Okay, for that humidity. And the final thing that we have is the enthalpy. Okay, enthalpy per kilogram of dry air. These lines are the enthalpy. These black lines are the enthalpy. This line, then this line. These are the enthalpy, and you can see the unit. So, for example, this is 20 kilojoule per kg of dry air. This enthalpy also contains the enthalpy of the water vapor. Okay, it's including the water vapor. So this line is 30 kilojoule per kg of dry air. This is 40 kilojoule per kg of dry air, like this. So if we have some value in between, we have to use a scale and interpolate, or you have to take the nearest value. If you want to take larger approximation, if you want to calculate very accurately, you have to use a scale and interpolate between two values. Okay. Any questions regarding this? Anything you don't understand regarding the psychrometric chart? This is a small version. Generally, engineers use very large versions, like a very large, of the size of say A0 sheet, like a table size chart, which is folded and you have to open it and use it. So like this we use. This is a very small version. For our course, this is sufficient. For air conditioning course, you need a very large chart where more details are present. Okay. So anything you don't understand here, or everything is understood. Okay. So you should be able to find out if two conditions are given, you can fix the point. Any two conditions are given, you can fix the point. So if I tell the wet bulb and dry bulb temperature, you can fix the point. If I tell you the dry bulb temperature and relative humidity, you can fix the point. If I tell you the enthalpy and relative humidity, you can fix the point. So any two conditions are given, you can fix the point. And then based on this, you can find all the other values. It will be approximate, but still it's okay to find the values. Means it will still give approximately correct results. Okay. If you want to do a very correct calculation, you have to use the tables instead of this. But the calculation will become much more difficult. So instead of the chart, if you use the tables, like the steam tables, then from that we can calculate what will be the enthalpy of water vapor at each temperature, then saturation, water vapor enthalpy, all these things. From this we can also do, but that becomes much more cumbersome. So now let us come back to our problem, okay, and it will give you an idea of how to calculate. So first value that we want to find is inlet condition, 20 degrees centigrade, 60% relative humidity. Okay, 20 degrees centigrade, 60% relative humidity. Let us find 20 degrees centigrade line. Okay, this is the 20 degrees centigrade line, right? Drawing is very difficult using the mouse. So my line is deviated from the 20 degrees centigrade, but I guess you get the idea. And what was the relative humidity? 60%, I guess. 60% relative humidity. So 60% relative humidity is this one, this line. So this cross section is our point. Okay, point 1. So this cross section is our point 1, and we want to find the first. What do we want to find? The humidity ratio, omega 1, or specific humidity. Okay, so I have to draw a line like this and find the omega 1. Because my line is slightly deviated, it is showing as something like 8.5. If you calculate more accurately, it may be slightly different. Okay, for me it is showing, so it is 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10. So for me it is showing as 8.5 or 8.6, something like that. Okay, here, but when I calculated, it was 8.8 gram per kg of dry air. Okay, so from the chart we can, so even if you take, somebody takes 8.8, somebody else takes 8.6, this is correct. So some variation will be there because you are manually taking the values. So this is acceptable. Okay, so small variations are acceptable, but if you take 10 gram per kg of dry air, then it is not acceptable. If you take 8.5 or 9, between 8.5 and 9, this is acceptable in the exam. Okay, so this is our omega 1. Okay, omega 1 we have calculated. Now we have to go to state 2. Any questions? You are clear how omega 1 is calculated? Same thing we will do for state 2. 28 degrees centigrade, 90%. So we will do it quicker. 28 degrees centigrade. This line is 28 degrees centigrade. Okay. So which one is 28 degrees centigrade? This is the line. Again, I have deviated quite a bit, but I guess this is fine. 90% relative humidity is this point. Okay, so this is our point. It is slightly larger than 21.5 and less than 22. Okay, so slightly larger than 21.5 and less than 22. So in my calculation, it was 21.8. Okay, even if you take 21.5 or 22, it will be okay, but better to have as accurate as possible. So omega 2 is 21.8. So omega 1 8.8 and omega 2 21.8. So per kg of dry air, mass flow rate of water, makeup water is 1 into. So do you remember this was gram per kg of dry air. So we have to convert to kg. So 0.0218 minus 0.0088, which is equal to 0.013 kg per kg of dry air. Okay, this is the amount of makeup water. Next, what is the next question? Let us take a look. Temperature of water leaving the cooling tower. Okay, for this we need to do an energy balance. So using energy balance, G1H1 plus m dot w, just what we have studied today. G1H1 plus m dot w3 HW3 plus m dot x HWX is equal to G2H2 plus m dot w4 HW. Okay. So our TW3 minus TW4, this also we have derived today. TW3 minus TW4 is equal to G into H2 minus H1. So G we will take as 1 because we are calculating per unit mass flow rate of dry air. So 1 into H2 minus H1 minus mass flow rate of makeup water, which we have calculated as 0.013, into HWX, which is the enthalpy of the makeup water per unit mass, divided by m dot w, mass flow rate of water, into Cp of water. Okay. So again, some approximations has been taken here while checking Cp value. Okay, Cp you can take 4.2 or 4.18. I have taken 4.18. Mass flow rate of water is given as 1.15 kg per kg of dry air. So 1.15 kg, because we are calculating per kg of dry air. So mass flow rate of water is 1.15 kg. What is H2 and H1? So HWX at 20 degrees centigrade, it can be either taken from the chart or you can just assume that it is equal to 4.2 into 20 degree if the reference state is 0. So based on that, it comes out as 84, okay, kilojoule per kg. And this value is anyway very small, so some small approximation here won't matter much. So the main contribution comes from here. Okay, so we have to find H2 and H1. So H1 is the enthalpy at state 1. We have already located state 1 in our diagram. Okay, this state 1. So let us find the enthalpy at this state. So enthalpy will be parallel to this line, okay, parallel to the bold line. Very poor drawing, but I don't have scale, something like this. Okay, so slightly larger than 40, around 41, I think 41 or 42. Okay, 41 or 42, something like that. So in this case, I have calculated it as 43. Okay, more accurately. If you have to use a scale, you have to use a scale to calculate more accurately, and it has come as 43. But it is nearby only. The value is nearby only. I think my line has deviated downwards. It should have gone like this, somewhat like this. Anyway, and for the H2 condition, again something like this. So it is somewhere around 83 or 84. Okay. So for my calculation, it was 83.5. Okay. So this is the enthalpy. This is how you get the enthalpy of wet air. Okay, from the psychrometric chart. If you want to use the steam tables, then you have to take the air enthalpy as Cp into T air, and then the water vapor enthalpy separately as omega 1 into water enthalpy. At water enthalpy, you have to take at 20 degree, whatever is the temperature, like 28 degree and 20 degree. Okay, or directly by using the table, you can calculate the from the graph. Okay, so based on this, now we can calculate all the values, and from psychrometric chart, I have obtained H1 equal to 43, H2 equal to 83.5 kilojoule per kg of dry air. Your values can be slightly defined. It is acceptable because we are manually calculating. So ultimately, I am getting TW3 minus TW4 as 8.2 degrees centigrade. Okay, TW3 minus TW4 as 8.2 degrees centigrade. Again, the value may change slightly, but the process should be same. Okay, so this is the range. Okay, and inlet temperature of water was 30 degrees centigrade. So outlet temperature should be 30 minus 8.2, so 21.8 degrees centigrade. This is a realistic value. Okay, 21.8 degrees centigrade. So second question was temperature of water leaving the cooling tower. It is 21.8 degrees centigrade. So we are cooling the water by 8.2 degrees centigrade. Okay. And now next question is approach and range of the cooling tower. Range we have already found 8.2 degrees centigrade. Range is already TW3 minus TW4, 8.2 degrees centigrade. For finding the approach, we have to find the void bulb temperature at state 1. Okay, as we had discussed. So for state 1, what is the void bulb temperature? These dotted lines are the void bulb temperature, right? These dotted lines are the void bulb temperature. So it is somewhere near 15. This is somewhere near 15. Okay, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15. Somewhere near 15, the void bulb temperature at this point. You have to go with the dotted lines. The dotted lines are the void bulb temperature. This is, for example, 25 degree, and this is 10 degree. So in this case, I have obtained it to be 15.2 degrees centigrade from the psychrometric chart. Okay, using a scale and interpolating. So approach becomes 21.8 minus 15.2, so 6.6 degrees centigrade. Okay. So the theoretical minimum temperature that is possible is 15.2, but we are obtaining 21.8. Okay. So finally, we can calculate the efficiency. Efficiency is the range divided by the range plus approach. Okay, or the actual cooling by the theoretical cooling possible. Actual cooling is 8.2. Theoretical cooling possible was 30 minus 15.2, which is 14.8. So 8.2 by 14.8, so it is 55.41%. Okay, so this is the final answer. So any questions? If there is a problem from this in the exam, I will provide the psychrometric chart. So you should know how to use the psychrometric chart. I have uploaded the psychrometric chart here also in the file section. I think in the other materials. Okay. So you have the psychrometric chart from the book. You can use any other psychrometric chart also. You need not use the screen one. So it looks very small, but you can zoom it. Okay. So and I will expect then the answers will be somewhat approximate because you are using such a small psychrometric chart. So obviously you cannot accurately measure the values, but at least the process should be correct. Okay, and you should know how to calculate, how to find all the values like void bulb temperature, then specific humidity values, or these are known, then how to find the relative humidities. All these values should be possible to find. Any questions? Otherwise, we have finished our course. If there are no other questions, you can ask any other questions also related to the course. I will stop the recording.